Go. Hey everyone, Tom Ray, the Mold Doctor here. Take two on the Mold Doctor podcast. Really wanted to continue to introduce the platform and how we're going to move forward. I know today is a holiday, it's Thanksgiving. I know a lot of you people are going to be with family and friends, and you're going to be visiting houses of relatives and again friends. Couple of things that I really want you to pay attention to. If you're watching this podcast, you're probably familiar with mold, toxic mold, and what it does. Chances are most people you come in contact with maybe know a little bit about mold, but most aren't really watching podcasts about mold. So the fact that you're even here indicates that you either have experienced mold exposure, going through it now, maybe you're in the industry, maybe you're a remediator or an inspector, or maybe you just want to learn more to see if your property, your home, your indoor environment has mold. And again, that's why you've dropped in. The homes that you visit, right, friends, family, etc., they might be unaware, as I mentioned, and you might walk into a situation where, especially if it's an older house, you might start smelling that musty odor and kind of discount it in the back of your head. Oh, it's nothing. Maybe it's just a little moisture in the basement. Well, the bad news is that mold, usually the first thing you smell is mold, not the moisture. You're smelling the mold because of the digestive process. I described that in my last podcast. When mold is absorbing the proteins out of the building materials, it is excreting, right? Let's call it a mold fart. And that's the odor you smell. It's actually usually a mycotoxin. So I really want you to pay attention to that. If you're in an environment, maybe you get a headache, maybe other people in the home are complaining about a headache. Pay attention, especially today. If you are feeling a little off or someone's complaining about feeling off, be a little bit of a mold inspector yourself. Take a walk around the property, take a walk downstairs if there's a basement. If there's a crawl space, ask about it. Ask if it has a vapor barrier. Ask if they've ever had moisture or flood or some kind of water event. By doing this, you're helping the people who, obviously, if you're spending the holidays with them, you care about, you're helping them. You're spreading the knowledge, you're spreading awareness, and you could potentially save their life when it comes to sickness down the line, because at this point now, we know that over a prolonged period of time of exposure, there could be a lot of correlations between autoimmune disease, respiratory disease. We haven't shown yet how far into the carcinogenic side. There are toxins that have been shown to be carcinogenics, so we do now know that there can be a correlation. But again, you're saving someone the sickness down the line, and even yourself for the day or for whatever amount of time you visit that person or property. You're giving yourself and the people there, good information to act on. What should they do? What was the first thing you do if you do come into a property that has mold and you're a guest? Obviously, you want to go about it in a way that's tactful. You don't want to, come out and offend any of your friends or family. If you have that type of relationship, be straight with them and say, hey, listen, I know a little bit enough about mold to tell you that there's something happening here that I recommend you get an inspection. And that's the first step, an inspection by a licensed or certified mold inspector. And I say licensed or certified because some states have a license requirement. New York, Washington, D.C., Louisiana, Texas, Florida, California, and other states don't. And New Jersey, Maryland, a bunch of other states don't have. They have certification. So you want to take the 3 R's that I always recommend. I actually might up it to 4 R's in order to find your inspector. Reviews, references, referrals, and reputation. There are 4. Reviews, references, referrals, and reputation. Those 4 R's, remember them when you're kind of, going through the process of interviewing an inspector, because that's really what it should be. It should be an interview like a contractor who's building an extension on your house or a playroom or a deck or a patio. You need to do your due diligence. You need to do your homework. You need to know that you have someone that gets it, someone that has experience in identifying mold. They should be able to provide you with past clients. You should be able to look them up online and easily find reviews. You can't hide from a bad reputation in this day and age. So by doing those few due diligence steps, you really will save yourself a big headache. And obviously, if it's for someone else, maybe a parent, a friend, a family member, help them with that process. I don't recommend using the lead sources, the lead referral programs. I'm not going to mention them by name, but there are a couple out there where you put your name and information in and they find pros for you. The problem with that, there's a few of them, but number one is now it's simply just them trying to get back the money they spent for your name. Those services that tell you, thumb something and, those type services, a name that starts with an A and ends with an E. Some of those services, or most of those services, how they work is you put your information in and basically that gets sent out to either multiple contractors or the highest bidder. Really, it's not too hard to trick them into, having your references look better than they really are. I highly recommend using Google, Yelp. Those are more on the review side, on trusted reviews. Google's probably number one. They make it pretty tough. But really, even if you do get it from one of those third-party lead sources, I'm not going to totally knock them out of the water because I've used them personally. But I will say that you really have to check the reviews. Don't just go based on the first company that contacts you or the lowest price. A lot of people think, the lowest price, mold inspection with 4 tests in my home, $500, let's go. And the other guy was $650 or $700. You know what? You might not be getting a great value if the company or the person who's doing that inspection is not going to provide you value. They're not going to give you what you should be getting in a mold inspection. And this is what you should be getting in a mold inspection. You should be getting a very thorough investigation of your property. You should be getting digital photos of construction defects and the tests being taken and any moisture readings and anything that should be brought to your attention. You should be getting the inspector, the use of a moisture meter and a thermal imaging camera in order to scan the house. Obviously, they should be using testing methods, whether it's ERMI, air pump, surface test with a swab, a tape lift, or a bulk sample. Those are tests that should be taken. And that's a whole new episode that we'll talk about down the line, the ERMI versus air test. There's no competition there. I'm going to tell you right now, right here on this episode, ERMI and air testing should be done in conjunction. And the reason why is simple. ERMI is very expensive. It's usually about $350 to $500 a location. Not really, something that's economical if you want to test your whole house. Air testing, on the other hand, is about $125 a test. You get multiple tests of air in different areas, and then you get the ERMI throughout the house. And now you could correlate the information, and a good inspector will be able to correlate it and to know where the source is of the mold, the types of mold, the history of the home that comes in on the ERMI side, and the speciation, the type of mold within the class. In other words, aspergillus. There's a bunch of them. Which aspergillus? Some are only allergenic, some are very toxic. So that's where the ERMI comes in. But the air test gives you leverage. It allows you to get very precise about where you're going to test throughout the property. That way you can zero in on where the problem's coming from, because it's not always apparent. Sometimes, it takes a really good amount of testing in order to identify exactly where the source is. So those are some of the things you should expect on the physical side of the inspection. As a byproduct of the inspection, not only should you get the lab report, that's a given, but the lab report is not the inspection report. A lot of inspectors out there will pass off that lab report and say, hey, here's your inspection report. And it's got the lab findings. It'll tell you what type of molds, have some numbers next to it, how many colonies, how many spores. That's not the inspection report. The inspection report is the product of the investigation put into a format where it says, this is what I did, this is where I looked, this is what I found, this is your next steps, here's what it should cost you to get this done. That's an inspection report. And again, it should include moisture readings, photos, and obviously the results from the testing, which will also be in the lab report, which is a separate document that you will get from the inspector, which he received from the laboratory, that those samples were analyzed at. So that's what compromises a good inspection. And follow-up. You did the inspection, the inspector did the inspection for you or your family or friend. They need to follow up. They need to say, hey, got the report ready for you. I'm sending over a copy. Let's go through it. This is what I found. That way it breaks it into layman's terms so you know what your next steps are. Also, I am very leery about giving people remediation contractors, specifically one person, because I don't want to not be partial. I want you to see that I'm being completely independent of trying to gain work from maybe a remediator that might kick back money to me as I'm the inspector. Obviously, I got the power of steering some business from mediation to certain contractors. If I do that, then now I'm not independent. Now I'm really not looking out for your interests. I'm trying to find problems so I could give it to a remediation contractor so he could give me money under the table, maybe a commission, maybe take me out to dinner, maybe send me and my family to Disneyland. I don't know, something. So you want to make sure that the inspector is very impartial. They give you 3 names, or they tell you, you find someone and I'll see if I think they have the right credentials. That's something you could do as a service if you're an inspector. And that's something that you would welcome if you are the client. That you would say, okay, fair enough. I'll find someone with the 4 R's, references, referrals, reviews, and reputation. And then I will evaluate if that company is good for you. So just a couple of things. And again, so we're talking about going to a person's house, visiting, they have a mold issue or they have some kind of problem in the house that you could smell and detect. Whether you smell it, you feel off, maybe you have a headache, or someone else feels those. Some of the immediate symptoms that when you are in an environment that has mold are respiratory, tightness of your chest, watering of the eyes, right? A very typical allergic reaction. Sniffles, right? Your nose starts running. Again, allergenic response. Headache might be more serious, might be a toxic response to a mold that produces mycotoxins like Stachybotrys or Eucaladium or Chaddingtonium. One of those molds could very well be. Also, you might see sneezing. You might see people maybe feel a little tired or lethargic. Now, granted, if you had a whole bunch of turkey and you're sleeping on the couch, that's a whole separate classification. That doesn't insinuate you have mold. It means you ate too much. But again, really pay attention. You're helping out your friends and family. Put that inspector hat on yourself, that cap. Walk through the property. I'm sure the person will be grateful that you've helped them find a problem potentially that again might prevent them from getting sick in the future or at that time. So this is a wrap on take 2. I hope I've been informative. I've tried to cover a few different topics here. I don't even know how much time I've spent with you today. I'm trying to see where that is. 14 minutes, not bad. I wanted to stay at about 15 minutes per episode. You might notice behind me I have my little Derek Jeter shrine. A new member of the Derek Jeter shrine I have is Judge. Obviously, if you're a Yankee fan, I'm from Brooklyn, a kid from Brooklyn. He is a hero, and he's a great guy, actually. The bat I have back here is from 1996. It's all the Yankees. I was at the World Series in 1996 as a young man, and I have the bat that commemorates them winning their first World Series in many years. It was the first year Derek Jeter was really a regular on the Yankees, and it was the beginning of a dynasty. Incredible. Sorry if you don't like the Yankees. As always, my friends, breathe clean, and stay healthy. If you have any suggestions for a show, send them over. Talk to you soon.